as the U.S. amasses one of its largest military buildups in the Middle East in years. And here to discuss what could be next is Janatan Sayeh, research analyst for the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
So the clear goal for the U.S. is to permanently prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. But is there another unspoken priority here for the U.S.?
Washington has announced a few red lines, actually, they want to impose on the Islamic Republic. One of them, of course, is to ensure that the regime does not have uranium enrichment capacity that would facilitate the way for nuclear weaponization. But parallel to that, you have the ballistic missiles. We were talking about ranges that could actually hit Europe, let alone Israel. These are the same missiles that Russia is using to sustain its war in Ukraine. In addition to that, you have the terror proxy led by Tehran across the region that has killed almost 1,000 U.S. servicemen in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. But given where the situation is headed, it's unlikely for Tehran to compromise on these issues, given that they're increasingly more paranoid and they view these three layers of deterrence as the only leverage they have.
How concerned is the U.S. about a possible regime change?
The cards are very much on the table. That's an option that actually might happen. In this context, realistically, it is more likely for us to see regime collapse or a democratic transition than the conventional regime change that we've seen in Iraq or Afghanistan. Ultimately, it comes down to the nature of a potential strike. If that military campaign were able to capitalize on the ongoing momentum on the ground in Iran, we're talking about a civic movement that is anti-Islamist and is, of course, pro-America. So if the United States were to meaningfully leverage that, that could really pave the way for an effective democratic transition, ensuring that we have an ally in a very turbulent Middle East.
I want to get back to the recent talks, which don't appear to be going very far at all. Do you think both sides are trying to buy time here?
Effectively, of course, that has been Tehran's strategy for the longest time, trying to stall talks as much as they can. That would ease the unrest domestically while also sending the message internationally that the regime is in fact legitimate, although we know that it's not, given that it's killed tens of thousands of unarmed protesters. But on the other hand, it did to an extent benefit the United States because that it enabled us to send a very aggressive fleet to the region, realistically much more stronger than what we had during the Persian Gulf. So that Persian Gulf War. So that again sends the signal to Tehran that should there be a confrontation, it is unlikely for it to be just a limited strike like we saw in Operation Midnight Hammer.
So let's talk about the president's deadline, these 10 to 15 days, that window that he has put out. Do you expect a deal to be reached within the window?
It is looking increasingly unlikely. As we noted, we're talking about an Islamic Republic that is very concerned about domestic unrest, and they see any compromise as a sign of weakness. They fought for years for this nuclear program. It is unlikely for them to surrender it, similar to what happened with Gaddafi. I just don't see that playing out for the Islamic Republic. On the other hand, the president has been very firm on his red line that Iran cannot have enrichment capacity. If we were to allow the Islamic Republic to maintain its centrifuges, then we would go back simply to the Obama deal, which is something that Trump exited himself.
I want you to talk about Iran's vulnerabilities right now and the possible targets that the U.S. might have if a strike does happen.
Well, first things first, following the 12-day war, the Islamic Republic's air defenses are effectively non-existent anymore. Now, you have to couple that with the fact that Iran does not have an air force, effectively. They do not really have any modern fighter jets. So it really comes down to their ballistic missiles as the only form of retaliation. So if there were to be a strike, similar to what we saw in the Israel-led June war in 2025, the first targets are probably going to be these air defenses that, some of them are existent, some of them are not, the stockpiles of the ballistic missiles, and what's also likely is potentially leadership decapitation. We saw Israel go after the heads of IRGC. Now, the real question again is this military campaign going to somehow communicate to the average Iranian, calling on them to rise up, similar to what President Trump posted a few weeks ago saying, Iranians, you should go and occupy government institutions. That is the key thing that we should be looking out for.
All right, that is Janatan Sayeh, a research analyst. We so appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.